The land around Albury carries a quiet kind of stillness, the sort that settles over rural Australia in the early hours before dawn. The gum trees stand like dark silhouettes against a sky still deciding whether it wants to be night or morning. The wind moves through the branches with a soft, whispering persistence, brushing over the long grass that grows wild along the roadside. It is a landscape that has seen decades of quiet mornings, decades of unremarkable days. But on the 1st of September, 1934, that stillness was broken by a discovery that would haunt the nation for generations. The road itself was unassuming, a stretch of how-long road that curved gently through the countryside, bordered by scrub and farmland. It was the kind of place where people passed through without thinking, where footsteps and tire tracks faded quickly into dust. But on that morning, a man walking along the roadside noticed something unusual inside a culvert, something that didn't belong, something that stopped him in his tracks. He approached cautiously, peering into the darkness beneath the concrete arch. The shape was unmistakable, a human form, twisted, burned, and left in a place where no one was meant to find it. The man stepped back, his breath catching in his throat, and ran to alert the authorities. Within the hour, police arrived, their boots crunching over gravel as they approached the culvert with a mix of dread and duty. The body was that of a woman, dressed in distinctive yellow silk pajamas. The fabric was scorched, the pattern barely visible in places, but the color remained unmistakable. Her skin bore the marks of fire, her face disfigured by heat and violence. She had been beaten, she had been shot, and she had been left here in a culvert on a quiet country road, as though her killer believed the land itself would swallow the evidence. The officers stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the scene. The morning light crept slowly across the landscape, illuminating the culvert in a pale, unforgiving glow. The woman's identity was unknown. Her story was unknown. And yet, even in death, she demanded attention. She demanded answers. The investigation began immediately. The body was transported to Sydney, where forensic experts examined every detail they could salvage. Her fingerprints were damaged, her facial features distorted by fire. The pajamas were unusual, imported silk, patterned, expensive, not the kind of clothing worn by someone living in poverty or obscurity. But despite the distinctive garment, no missing person report matched her description. The newspapers seized the story with fervor. Headlines splashed across front pages, describing the mysterious woman found in pajamas, burned and abandoned. The public became captivated, drawn to the tragedy and the mystery in equal measure. Who was she? Why was she killed? And why had she been left in such a remote place? Police interviewed hundreds of people. They followed leads across New South Wales and Victoria. They compared dental records, clothing styles, witness statements. But every lead dissolved into nothing. Every clue led to a dead end. The woman remained unidentified, a ghost in silk pajamas. Her body was preserved in a glass tank at the University of Sydney, a decision that sparked controversy even at the time. People came to see her, drawn by morbid curiosity or genuine concern. Some believed they recognized her. Some claimed she was a neighbor, a friend, a relative, but none of the identifications held up under scrutiny. Years passed. The case grew cold. The Pyjama Girl, as she came to be known, remained a symbol of unanswered questions, a reminder of a crime that refused to be solved. But in 1939, 5 years after the discovery, investigators decided to revisit the area near the culvert. They believed the killer might have disposed of evidence in a nearby dam, a place deep enough to hide clothing, weapons, or personal items. The dam had been there for years, its waters dark and still, its depths concealing whatever secrets had been thrown into it. The decision to drain the dam was ambitious. It required manpower, equipment, and time. But the investigators were determined. They believed that somewhere beneath the surface, the truth waited to be uncovered. The operation began early in the morning, the machinery rumbling to life as workers prepared to lower the water level. The dam's surface rippled under the force of the pumps, the water swirling and churning as it began to recede. The muddy shoreline expanded slowly, revealing patches of earth that had not seen sunlight in years. As the water drained, investigators moved closer, scanning the exposed ground for anything unusual. At first, they found small items, fragments of fabric, pieces of debris. But then, larger items began to emerge. A pair of gumboots, a single slipper, a shoe, a blouse, fragments of a silk dress. The clothing was waterlogged, stained, and fragile. The colors had faded, the fabric had deteriorated, but the shapes remained identifiable. The investigators collected each item carefully, placing them in containers to be examined later. The discovery sparked renewed interest in the case. The clothing items were taken to Sydney, where detectives attempted to reconstruct a full outfit using the recovered pieces. The reconstruction was featured in Australia Today, a popular newsreel series that dramatized the investigation. The footage showed detectives laying out the clothing, examining each piece, and appealing directly to viewers for help. The newsreel was dramatic, designed to capture the public's attention. It portrayed the discovery as a breakthrough, a moment when the case might finally be solved. The government issued a £1,000 reward, a substantial sum at the time, hoping someone would recognize the clothing or recall a missing woman who matched the description. Crowds gathered to watch the newsreel in cinemas, their faces illuminated by the flickering light as the images played across the screen. People whispered to one another, speculating about the identity of the woman, wondering whether the clothing belonged to her or to someone connected to her. But despite the publicity, despite the reward, despite the nationwide attention, no one came forward with a definitive lead. The clothing remained a mystery, just like the woman herself. The Pyjama Girl remained unidentified. The years continued to pass, each one adding distance between the discovery and the possibility of answers. But the case refused to fade entirely. It lingered in the public consciousness, resurfacing occasionally in newspapers or conversations. The mystery endured, stubborn and unresolved. It wasn't until 1944, 10 years after the discovery, that police announced they had identified the victim as Linda Agostini, a Melbourne woman who had disappeared years earlier. Her husband, Antonio, confessed to killing her, though his confession was inconsistent. He changed details, contradicted himself, and offered explanations that did not align with the forensic evidence. Still, the case was officially closed. The Pyjama Girl had a name. The mystery, according to authorities, had been solved. But not everyone agreed. Modern historians argue that the identification may have been wrong. Linda Agostini had brown eyes. The Pyjama Girl had blue eyes. Linda had different dental features, different facial measurements, different physical characteristics. Even the clothing found in 1939 did not match anything Linda was known to have owned. Some experts believe the clothing belonged to a different woman entirely, meaning the Pyjama Girl may still be unidentified. If true, the 1939 clues were not a breakthrough. They were a distraction, a misdirection that may have led investigators away from the truth. The land around Albury remains quiet today, its stillness unchanged by the passage of time. The culvert still stands, a silent witness to a crime that has never been fully understood. The dam has long since refilled, its waters calm and unassuming. But beneath the surface of history, the mystery persists. The Pyjama Girl's story is one of unanswered questions, of clues that lead nowhere, of evidence that contradicts itself. It is a story that refuses to be neatly resolved, a story that continues to haunt those who seek the truth. And as we move deeper into the investigation, into the evidence, into the controversy, the question remains, who was the Pyjama Girl? And why has her story remained hidden for so long? The years following the draining of the dam carried a strange kind of weight. The discovery of the clothing had stirred hope, But hope in a cold case is fragile. It flickers like a candle in a draft, bright for a moment, then trembling, then fading again. The investigators felt that tremble. The public felt it too. For a brief period, the Pyjama Girl mystery seemed close to resolution, as though the truth were finally within reach. But the truth remained elusive, slipping through fingers like water. The clothing items were examined meticulously. Each thread, each stain, each tear was studied under harsh lights in forensic rooms where silence hung heavy. The gumboots were worn, the soles scuffed from use. The slipper was delicate, almost dainty, a stark contrast to the brutality of the crime. The blouse was torn, its fabric weakened by time and water. The fragments of the silk dress were fragile, their colors muted by mud and decay. Experts debated the significance of the items. Some believed they belonged to the victim. Others argued they were unrelated, discarded long before the murder. The dam had been a dumping ground for years, a place where people threw unwanted belongings, broken tools, and forgotten clothing. The items could have been from anyone, from any time, but the investigators clung to the possibility that they were connected to the Pyjama Girl. They needed something to hold on to. The Australia Today newsreel amplified that need. The footage, dramatic and stylized, presented the clothing as a breakthrough. The narrator spoke with urgency, his voice echoing through cinemas as audiences watched the reconstructed outfit displayed on a table. The images were grainy, the lighting stark, but the message was clear. Someone out there knew something. Someone recognized the clothing. Someone held the key to solving the mystery. But no one came forward. The silence that followed was deafening. It settled over the investigation like dust, coating every lead, every theory, every hope. The detectives returned to their routines, their desks cluttered with files that had grown old and brittle. The Pyjama Girl case remained open, but it no longer commanded the same urgency. It became a shadow in the background, a reminder of a failure that no one wanted to confront. Yet the story refused to die. It lingered in the public consciousness, resurfacing in conversations, in newspaper columns, in the minds of those who had seen the preserved body in the glass tank. The image of the woman in silk pajamas haunted people. It haunted the investigators, too. They had seen countless cases, countless tragedies, but something about this one clung to them. Something about the anonymity of the victim, the brutality of the crime, the unanswered questions. It all created a sense of unfinished business. Time moved forward, indifferent to the mystery. The world changed. New cases emerged. New headlines captured attention. But the Pyjama Girl remained, suspended in a strange limbo between memory and myth. By 1944, a decade had passed since the discovery. The world was deep in the throes of war, and Australia was no exception. The nation's focus had shifted to global conflict, to rationing, to loss, to survival. But even in wartime, the Pyjama Girl's story found its way back into the public eye. It began with a confession. Antonio Agostini, an Italian immigrant living in Melbourne, came forward and admitted to killing his wife, Linda. His confession was hesitant, fragmented, filled with contradictions. He claimed the death had been accidental, the result of a struggle. He claimed panic had driven him to dispose of the body. He claimed he had acted alone. The police listened. Their interest piqued. Linda Agostini had disappeared years earlier, her absence noted but never fully explained. Her husband's confession seemed to offer closure, a neat resolution to a case that had defied explanation for so long. The authorities compared Linda's details to those of the Pyjama Girl. Some features aligned, others did not. But the desire for resolution was strong, and the inconsistencies were brushed aside. The Pyjama Girl was declared to be Linda Agostini. The case was closed. The public accepted the conclusion with a mix of relief and uncertainty. Relief because the mystery had finally been solved. Uncertainty because the solution felt incomplete, as though pieces of the puzzle had been forced into place, But the official narrative prevailed. The Pyjama Girl had a name. The story had an ending, or so it seemed. In the decades that followed, the case was revisited by historians, journalists, and forensic experts. They examined the evidence with fresh eyes, unburdened by the pressures that had influenced the original investigation. They compared photographs, dental records, physical measurements. They studied the clothing, the autopsy reports, the witness statements, and they found discrepancies. Linda Agostini had brown eyes. The Pyjama Girl had blue eyes. Linda's dental records did not match the preserved teeth of the victim. Linda's facial structure differed from the measurements taken of the Pyjama Girl. Linda's height did not align with the autopsy findings. Linda's known clothing did not resemble the pajamas or the items found in the dam. The inconsistencies were too significant to ignore. The more experts studied the case, the more they questioned the identification. Some argued that the authorities had been eager to close the case, eager to present a solution during a time of national turmoil. Others suggested that Antonio's confession had been coerced or influenced by fear, guilt, or misunderstanding. The truth became murky, obscured by time and conflicting accounts. The Pyjama Girl's identity, once declared with confidence, became uncertain once more. The land around Albury remained unchanged, its quiet stillness indifferent to the debates unfolding in academic circles and media outlets. The culvert stood as it always had, a silent witness to a crime that had never been fully understood. The dam, refilled and calm, concealed whatever secrets had not been uncovered during the draining operation.